So last time we saw Sandor Clegane on Game of Thrones, the TV adaptation of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire, he is left for dead by Arya Stark, with wounds sustained in his brutal and really quite gratuitous fight with Brienne of Tarth, a fight which in the books never happened. The injuries that put down the Hound were actually from the fight at the Crossroads Inn, but in any case we are led to believe that Sandor Clegane is dead. However, we don't actually see him die. There's a theory, known as the Gravedigger theory, that the Hound not only lives, but appears in a Brienne chapter of A Feast for Crows after his supposed death in a storm of swords. So what actually happens in that chapter, and why does it suggest that Sandor Clegane is alive? In this chapter, Brienne and companions are trying to find the Hound, in the belief that he has Sansa Stark. He actually has, or had, Arya, but either way, Brienne swore an oath to find the both of them for their mother, Catelyn. The point is that Brienne and co, while searching for the Hound, pass through a small island in the Riverlands called the Quiet Isle, which is inhabited by brothers of the faith of the Seven who have made vows of silence. So Brienne talks with the elder brother, the only man on the island allowed to speak, in, by the way, what kind of amounts to a hobbit hole. And the elder brother tells her, to her surprise, that the Hound is already dead. He says that he came across the dying Sandor, nursed him until his death, and buried him. He then talks for a bit about the nature of the Hound, about the Hound's horse, who is now in the brother's stable, and about himself. Brienne tells the brother her life story, reaffirms her vow to find Arya and/or Sansa, and the chapter ends. How is this interpreted to suggest that the Hound is still alive? It's in the details. So, the elder brother does say that the Hound is dead, but when telling his own story, the elder brother also says that he himself died in the Battle of the Trident. This is obviously not a literal death, but a metaphorical death, the end of one identity and the emergence of another, for which the elder brother involved a spiritual awakening which took him to the faith and to the Quiet Isle, what he calls his second life. So the fact that the elder brother talks about life and death in this metaphorical sense calls into question his saying that Sandor Clegane is dead. Maybe it too is a metaphorical death. Well, actually, the elder brother only ever says that the Hound is dead, that the man you hunt is dead. The most he'll say about Sandor Clegane is that he is at rest. So what the elder brother could be getting at is that the hateful, violent part of Sandor Clegane, called the Hound, is metaphorically dead, leaving Sandor Clegane at rest, and most importantly for us, literally alive. If he's alive though, where is he? Well, on the way up the Quiet Isle, Brienne sees a brother digging graves who matches Sandor pretty much perfectly. Firstly, he's described as being bigger than Brienne. Brienne is huge, well over 6 feet tall, according to George R.R. Martin. The Hound is one of the few people in Westeros who is, or may be, bigger. Secondly, the man is described as being lame and half-crippled. Sandor could well be lame, given his leg was seriously wounded at the Crossroads Inn, as was the rest of him, really. Thirdly, Brienne sees the Gravedigger pausing his work to scratch a dog's ear. It makes sense that Sandor would show affection for the animal that is his sigil, and it's a nice little symbolic hint that the Gravedigger has some connection with hounds. Finally, the Gravedigger is said to be a novice of the brothers, which he would be if he was a recently joined brother of the Quiet Isle. One other important detail is that many of the brothers at the Quiet Isle wear lengths of wool around the lower halves of their faces, along with robes, so that all that can be seen of them are their eyes. What this means is that the distinctive features of the Hound, i.e. the disfiguring burns on his face, wouldn't be seen or recognized by Brienne, her companions, or anyone else. So this Gravedigger is suspiciously like Sandor Clegane. A final piece of evidence involves the Hound's horse, named Stranger. The horse is known to have an extremely violent temperament, biting and kicking anyone who isn't Sandor. The brothers at Quiet Isle are no exception. Stranger broke one brother's shin and bit an ear off another. So, if we are to believe that Sandor Clegane really did literally die, how on Earth, or on whatever the hell's kind of planet A Song of Ice and Fire is set on, did the elder brother get Stranger to the Quiet Isle? What makes it really implausible is the nature of the path to Quiet Isle. When Brienne and companions are taken to the Isle, we see what Septon Meribald calls the Path of Faith. It's apparently the only way to the Isle, and it's a maze-like, unmarked, natural path at least 1.5 miles long across an expanse of mud, where you have to be careful where you set your feet, or you'll be swallowed by quicksand, or end up drowning when the tide comes in. It's so dangerous that when Septon Meribald leads Brienne and co. across, he has to periodically stop and poke the ground ahead with his staff to find safe passage. Can we really believe that the elder brother, on his own, took such a wild and dangerous horse on such a treacherous path? Why would the elder brother even risk trying? What makes far more sense is that while the Hound metaphorically dies, Sandor Clegane is literally, well, and metaphorically, healed by the elder brother, who, by the way, is said to have miraculous healing hands. So the one man who can control Stranger walks the path of faith with the elder brother in relative safety and becomes a novice of the brothers. It seems likely that the elder brother becomes a friend or mentor to Sandor, as this would explain the deep knowledge that the brother has of his nature. So there you go. There is pretty compelling textual evidence, or strong hints at least, that Sandor Clegane is still alive, living as a monk of sorts on Quiet Isle, and possibly atoning for a life of violence, just as the elder brother is atoning for his career as a soldier. It gives a really satisfying, if entirely implicit, conclusion to his character arc, because Sandor is a significant and complex character. Unlike his brother, who seems a simple beast to the core, Sandor has some sensitivity, some humanity, which he hides behind a quite literal mask of thoughtless, animalistic aggression, the Hound. It's not entirely unlike Tyrion and dwarfism.
Never forget what you are. Wear it like armor.
But it's rather more like Slim Shady and Marshall Mathers, if I can use that analogy with a straight face. Aggression to hide emotional insecurity, you know? Anyway, so Sandor has two identities, burned and unburned, hound and man, brutal and kind, fearless and fearful, fire and ice, and this conflict hurts him, driving him to drinking and disregard for his own life. Arya leaves the Hound for dead, and in a way, the Hound does die. The elder brother helps Sandor exercise his darker half, remove the Hound helmet for good, and find peace and rest at the Quiet Isle. This is why the elder brother lies to Brienne, or at least chooses to be a tad indirect with the truth. It's understandable that the elder brother would want to protect his new novice, this man who he has worked to enlighten, and with whom he probably identifies given their similar pasts. It's funny, in a way. The
worst shit in the Seven Kingdoms
is one of the only characters in the Song of Ice and Fire to get a happy ending, while the honourable men and the heroic men are killed and discredited. There's no justice in the Game of Thrones. Wrongdoers not only get away with their crimes, but often end up better off than the good guys. The Gravedigger theory can be seen as consistent with that theme. One last thing, and this is where show watchers should stop watching this video. Spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning. It's kind of obligatory at this point to recognize that many fans of A Song of Ice and Fire not only believe that Sandor is alive on Quiet Isle, but expect him to return to King's Landing to confront his now undead and possibly headless brother, Robert Strong, in Cersei's trial by combat. This theory, or rather this wild fanboy speculation, is known as Clegane Bowl. It's known as Clegane Bowl. The evidence for Clegane Bowl doesn't extend far beyond "it would be like totally awesome, man." While it's true that Sandor Clegane has wanted to kill his brother for some time, what we've learned at the Quiet Isle strongly suggests he's gotten over that hatred. Sandor has put down his helm, put down his sword, put down his anger, and found peace as a monk, a crippled monk on a secluded island far from King's Landing. How and why would he want to fight in the trial? Why would anyone let him be the champion of the faith, monk or not? Why would he not be executed the day he walks into King's Landing, given that the last time he was there he abandoned the king he was sworn to protect? There's just no compelling evidence, so Clegane Bowl has to be considered a distant possibility at best, albeit a totally awesome one. So yeah, that's Clegane Bowl, and that's the Gravedigger theory. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested, a video explaining the deal with Robert Strong is a possibility, among others, so let me know. Either way, you can definitely expect more A Song of Ice and Fire fan theory videos fairly soon. If you can't wait, check out these sites for what's probably the best A Song of Ice and Fire discussion and analysis on the internet. I'd like to make very clear that I don't claim credit for coming up with these theories. I may add my own ideas, but they are ultimately a collective effort, notably by the users of these sites. So there are now Facebook and Twitter pages for this channel, if you're into that sort of thing, where you can be notified of new videos or whatever else is going on. Finally, I'd like to sincerely thank everyone who has watched and subscribed and shared and left comments over the past week. These videos exist because of your support, so thank you.